Mel Gibson's disturbing warning about playing Jesus in The Passion of the Christ recently came to light in an interview with Joe Rogan. During the conversation, Gibson revealed some truths about Jim Caviezel and the impact of the film. Rogan also admitted a surprising fact: the price Christians pay in Hollywood. Glamorous, ruthless, and secretive, the entertainment industry hides some disturbing truths. But something unexpected happened when Joe Rogan approached Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel, the duo behind The Passion of the Christ. He revealed a harsh reality. Being a Christian in Hollywood is not only frowned upon, but it can cost you everything from roles to your reputation. What is the cost? And why do believers like Gibson and Caviezel continue to face adversity despite the opposition? Today, we're diving into this explosive revelation that could change your perception of the entertainment industry forever. Joe Rogan is known for not shying away from controversial topics. His podcast often delves behind the scenes into the hidden world of Hollywood. When the conversation turned to Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel, Rogan didn't hold back. He admitted what many have long suspected. In Hollywood, being a Christian is a burden. Not only is it frowned upon, but it can also be costly, and not just financially. Joe Rogan commented, "I thought it was fascinating to hear Jim talk about his experience." Mel Gibson responded, "He really changed the course of his entire life. It was fascinating to watch his work. Most of the time, I just walked away because he was doing something I had never seen before." Rogan then went on to say that the film must have had a profound impact on so many people because it wasn't just a movie, but something that strengthened faith. Indeed, The Passion of the Christ was not just a box office success. It was a global phenomenon. But behind the scenes, strange and even frightening events took place. At the heart of it all was a disturbing warning that forever changed the lives of everyone involved. What did Mel Gibson witness during the production? What was the warning about playing Jesus, and how did it affect the actor who played the role? Read on, because this story will surprise you and perhaps inspire you. In the early 2000s, making a biblical film wasn't exactly a popular idea in Hollywood. Mel Gibson wanted to tell the story of Jesus' crucifixion with brutal honesty. However, studios repeatedly turned down the project. Some executives believed that a film about Jesus wouldn't sell. Others feared the controversy that could arise from such a bold project. But Mel wouldn't give up. He decided to finance the film with his own money, risking millions on a leap of faith. It's amazing to think that when Mel Gibson first entered the world of Hollywood, he had no idea how it would change his life forever. Imagine a small-town kid in Australia who just a few years earlier didn't even know if he could make it as an actor, suddenly found himself at the center of the world's largest film industry. Few artists have dared to reveal the deep truths about the industry like Mel. After his initial success, he faced something much deeper. The glitz and glamour of Hollywood often felt overwhelming, even alienating. He described his early days as a mix of fascination and paranoia. It was like being thrown into another world, where everyone already knew the rules, but no one bothered to explain them to you, he said. As his career took off, the darker sides of Hollywood began to reveal themselves. While the world celebrated his talent, Mel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the industry. But for now, he rode the wave of success, creating a string of iconic films that would stand the test of time. Hollywood may seem glamorous on the surface, but behind the scenes, it's a machine driven by one thing: money. For Mel Gibson, this reality became apparent as he transitioned from actor to filmmaker. He quickly realized that storytelling wasn't the only priority in the business. Profit was the real driver. He discovered that the studio system wasn't just about making movies, it was about relationships. Deals were made behind closed doors, loyalties were tested, and trust was often a fleeting concept. Mel described times when he felt betrayed by people he considered allies. This ability to let go of resentment was essential to surviving in Hollywood. Mel learned to see the industry for what it really was, a place where everyone was looking out for their own interests. He realized that even the best-intentioned people could make decisions that hurt others, often without malice. "It's not personal," he explained. "They don't really want to hurt you. It's just the way they act. Stamer works." As Mel Gibson established himself as a major name in Hollywood, he also became painfully aware of its darker side. Behind the flashing lights and thunderous applause lay a world of deception, manipulation, and betrayal. The industry was filled with people who would praise him one moment and undermine him the next, all in the name of advancing their own careers. For Mel, this was not only a harsh reality, but a personal challenge to overcome. He likened Hollywood to a surreal city where nothing was as it seemed. "It's like walking into a room where everyone knows something you don't," he said. "It's like those old movies where the stranger walks into the bar and everyone stops talking." This sense of alienation was something Mel felt keenly when he first arrived in Hollywood. At times, he even questioned his own sanity, wondering if he was imagining the dark forces at work. But as his career progressed, he realized his suspicions were not unfounded. "Some of my worst nightmares have come true," he admitted. "This place will humble you, but it can also humble you." Mel faced controversy in bringing Jesus' final hours to the screen. He met with constant opposition from all sides. Mel Gibson said it all started with a question: what were the last hours of Jesus' life really like? That question haunted him. It wasn't just an idea for a movie, it was a calling. He couldn't let it go. He wanted to show the world the pain, the sacrifice, the reality. But as we'll see, not everyone was ready for the truth. Mel knew this project would be hard to get. Hollywood wasn't interested in his vision. They wanted safe, predictable stories, and a stark portrayal of Jesus didn't fit the mold. "I thought others have told this story before, but never like this," he said. "I wanted to dig deeper, show the suffering, and highlight the true cost of sacrifice." But instead of support, he faced rejection after rejection. Mel found his leading man in Jim Caviezel. He saw something special in Jim, a quality that set him apart. He said, "Jim emptied himself and let Christ in." But this role would take Jim on an unexpected journey. He was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, in the early 2000s, starring in huge hits. However, after accepting the role in The Passion of the Christ, everything changed. Before Jim accepted, Gibson warned him, "If you take this role, you'll never work in this town again." Despite this warning, Jim accepted without hesitation, saying, "We all have to embrace our crosses." After the film's release, Mel's predictions came true. Despite its huge success, Jim was virtually banned from the industry. For him, playing Jesus wasn't just acting. It was a calling. This decision reflected faith, conviction, and the courage to sacrifice everything for something greater. Jim said, "We have to give up our names, our reputations, our lives to tell the truth." Taking on such a role was a bold move, but Jim never regretted his decision. He chose to lean fully into his faith, embracing the role and the impact it would have on his life. When The Passion of the Christ hit theaters in 2004, it became one of the most talked-about films in the world. Defying all expectations, it grossed over $600 million worldwide, despite its modest budget. It was praised by many for its raw and accurate portrayal of the final hours of Jesus' life. However, for Jim, whose performance was powerful and deeply emotional, the story was not as simple as critical acclaim or box office success. The film divided not only audiences, but Hollywood as well. While many fans celebrated his portrayal of Christ, the reaction from the film industry was less than warm. Some in the industry considered the film too controversial, and by association, Jim became a controversial figure himself. It was clear that in Hollywood, he was no longer viewed in the same light. After The Passion of the Christ, the calls from the big studios slowed down, and he found himself on the outside looking in. Jim later reflected on this, saying that he didn't mind the change. He was willing to sacrifice his career to be a part of that story. In his own words, Jesus is as controversial now as he ever was. He hasn't changed much in 2,000 years. He understood that playing Christ might mean he would never play a major role in Hollywood again. But for him, it was worth it. While The Passion of the Christ brought him closer to his faith, it also took him away from the typical Hollywood path. Mel Gibson, the film's director, said that Jim did something special. He did something that I don't think anyone else has done, and I think he did it because he just emptied himself. He didn't try anything, he just meditated and let Christ in. This role seems to have had a profound effect on Jim, both as an actor and as a human being. Imagine standing on a hill, surrounded by 350 people, with the wind howling and the sky thick with clouds. You feel the earth shift beneath your feet. Suddenly, the wind stops, the sound disappears, and time seems to slow down. Then, you are outside of your body, watching yourself from above. This was Jim's experience while filming one of the most intense scenes in The Passion of the Christ. While many have seen the film, few know about the extreme pain Jim endured while filming the crucifixion scene. This was no ordinary moment. Imagine being lifted up on a cross, exposed to the elements for hours on end. For Jim, every moment was physically exhausting and spiritually overwhelming. The day itself felt surreal. The wind roared, making it difficult to hear anything clearly. The clouds were dark and heavy, hanging low in the sky, as if the heavens were watching. Jim described the sensation as otherworldly, as if the earth itself were alive beneath him, groaning and shaking. It wasn't just the physical conditions that made the scene difficult, but also what Jim carried in his heart. He wasn't just playing a role. He knew he was stepping into something much deeper, something sacred. The wind was blowing so hard, Jim recalled. The clouds were so close, it felt like I could jump out and touch them. The ground, you could feel something about it, almost like it was alive. As the crew prepared for the scene, there was an air of unease among everyone. The extras, the cameramen, the directors, everyone seemed to feel something. It wasn't just acting anymore. It felt real. Jim recounted how the wind got so strong that it nearly knocked people over. Yet amid all the chaos, he found a profound calm. The wind, the noise, even the murmurs of the people, it all seemed to stop. Then, something changed. Jim described how time seemed to slow down. I couldn't hear the wind anymore, he said. Everything went quiet. What happened next was something no one on the set could explain. Hanging from the cross, surrounded by hundreds of people on set, something extraordinary happened. Jim described it in his own words. I stepped out of my body. I saw the back of myself for a few seconds that seemed much longer. He wasn't just acting. He wasn't just a man playing Jesus. It was as if his soul had separated, giving him a new perspective. From above, he could see himself hanging there, just as Jesus had done centuries ago. He could also see the crowd, the extras, the crew, all moving around the set. But what struck him most was the stillness of it all. Time didn't feel the same. It wasn't rushing or crawling, it just was. It was peaceful, Jim said. It wasn't scary, it wasn't painful. It was like something bigger was being shown to me. When Jim returned to his body, the peace he had felt moments before was replaced by a harsh, painful reality. He was cold, exhausted, and in pain, but he knew he had to keep going. Years later, during a near-death experience, Jim recalled Jesus' words, "I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." These words seem harsh, even shocking at first. Why would Jesus, the Prince of Peace, bring a sword? What did he mean by that? Jim explained that it was a call to make difficult choices, a division that arises when we choose God above all else. He spoke of the generational sins that weigh us down, the patterns of brokenness and separation that tear families apart. For Jim, this wasn't just theology, it was personal. Jesus often talked about who our true brothers and sisters are, he said. He said, "Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister." Following God often means losing people we thought we could never live without. Jim shared how this truth has impacted his own life. He has faced challenges in his portrayal of Jesus, personal trials, professional setbacks, and spiritual battles. Many questioned his decisions and even mocked his faith. But Jim remained steadfast, believing that his obedience to God mattered more than the approval of others. "It's not easy," Jim admitted. "Jesus never said it would be, but he promised it would be worth it." The sword Jesus spoke of is about cutting away the things that keep us from reaching him, the things we think we need but don't. For Jim, this message became even clearer as he reflected on his near-death experience. The peace he felt in that moment was not tied to anything on earth. It wasn't about success, comfort, or even the people around him. It was about God's love, a love so powerful that it cuts through everything else. Jim said, "When you truly find God, you realize that nothing else matters, not the pain, not the rejection, not even the death. All that matters is him." This realization gave Jim the strength to continue his mission, even when the road was difficult. He saw his role in the Passion of the Christ not just as a performance, but as a calling, a way to share the gospel with the world. Jim's story reminds us that following Jesus is a choice that often comes with sacrifice, but one that leads to peace, love, and eternal life. After all that Jim experienced on the cross, in near-death moments, and in the trials that followed, he came away with a message rooted in God's love, sacrifice, and peace. Jim reflected on Jesus' final command, to love. He said, "Jesus asks us to love, even when it's hard. That's why I obey him." For Jim, loving like Jesus isn't just about kindness or forgiveness. It's about obedience. He shared how the call to love often requires us to give up what we think we need, our pride, our grudges, even our comforts. Jim's journey, both on and off the cross, reminds us that love is more than a feeling. It's a choice to forgive, to obey, and to trust in God's plan. And it's through that choice that we find the peace Jesus promises. Jim's story is a testament to the power of faith and God's love. It's a reminder that no matter how difficult the journey, there is hope, there is peace, and there is love waiting for all of us if we choose to follow that path.